Hi, this is Irv Shapiro with Make with Tech. The very first laser that I looked at on this channel, where we teach people how to use desktop technology to create things, to make things, to innovate, was this Quilu laser that is very tiny and allowed me to make little small wooden luggage tags. And all it did is engrave in cardboard and wood in relatively soft materials. It sold for about $120. The world has come a long ways since then. And one of the companies responsible for that innovation is Ortur, O-R-T-U-R. They really produced some of the first diode-based, consumer-friendly, hobbyist-friendly, small business-friendly lasers. And these devices not only could engrave, and they could do it on much larger materials, but they could cut, or they could cut much more elaborate patterns such as this. And they did it for under $1,000, which was really quite remarkable. Initially, most of them were limited to about 5 watts of optical power, which limited the types of materials you could use them with. More recently, by combining multiple diode-based lasers into a single focused point, these lasers are now available in higher powers. I'm very excited today to be looking at the Ortur Laser Master 3. Now, on this channel, you've probably seen I did a review of the X-Tool D1 laser before. And on the surface, they look to be very similar machines. But there are advantages and disadvantages to each. And I think there's some unique characteristics of the Laser Master 3 that you're going to want to know about. So stay tuned and let's learn something together. The Make with Tech channel is really a bit more than just this YouTube channel. It's also a blog with a series of posts about things that are important to people learning how to make things, how to use various devices and tools. It's a forum.makewithtech.com, where thousands of people go to share advice with each other, to post pictures and ideas. And it's models.makewithtech.com, a very unique site for finding things to 3D print or to cut and engrave on your new laser. Now I'm going to begin this review by just looking at the specs. The specs of the Ortur Laser Master 3 are similar to a number of other devices in the industry. It's about a 400 by 400 millimeter engraving area. We'll see when it's assembled. That's a very nice size. It has an 11th generation control board, and the control board is much faster and has stepper motor drivers. That means the chips that control the motors that move the laser back and forth and side to side that are very advanced. So that allows it to have the ability to locate the laser precisely. And we'll talk about that a little further in the video. The laser dot is quite finely focused and has a precision in movement of 0.01 millimeters. That's really tiny, and that's how it's able to produce very nice details. There is a web interface to the laser. I'm very curious to try that out. And it's compatible with a variety of software programs. Because I'm using a Mac, we're going to use one particular program that we'll talk about shortly. Okay, so I'm going to go off camera now and assemble this together. Assembly of this laser is basically consists of bolting together the frame, which is just a big rectangle, plugging a couple cables in, And then we'll take a look at getting started with this laser by using the app it ships with. And then we'll talk about how to configure software to use with this laser. Well, I've had a fascinating few days experimenting, learning about this particular laser printer. And to be honest, I'm comparing it with the Xtool D1 laser printer. During those couple of days, I've gone through a lot of material. You can see here it cuts very, very well. It engraves very well. And so let me start by sharing with you my observations about assembly. The assembly is very straightforward, as long as you don't use this guide. This guide is very small. I don't know if it's my old eyes, but I had a really hard time with this. And then I discovered that on the SD card that comes with this printer are full-size instruction guides and also videos. And in fact, on the Ortur website are much clearer videos about how to assemble this. So you can go right to Ortur, you can go to YouTube and type Ortur, and it's the Laser Master 3. And that'll help you a lot. Now, let me share with you a couple things that I learned, because fundamentally what you have here is a rectangular frame. You bolt it together, you slide the gantry on, you plug together a couple cables. How hard could that be? The stepper motor, the motor that controls this motion, and it's very interesting, there's a message here, a warning here, not to roll this back and forth rapidly. And the reason is that stepper motors are DC motors, and a DC motor and a DC generator are really the same devices. The difference is if you put current in, you apply electricity, it turns, it's a motor. If you don't apply electricity and you move the motor manually, it generates electricity. That, by the way, is why electric vehicles nowadays have regenerative braking, uses that same principle. So if you move this very rapidly, you're going to send some current to the control board, which could cause a problem. So only move this very slowly if you're moving it manually. Now, the stepper motor is over here. The control board is in this panel. In fact, it's right here. And there's a wire, a cable that goes from here to there. And one of the first assembly instructions is to fish the cable through this left side extrusion before you bolt it in place. At the end of the cable is a connector, and the connector is keyed. It will only go into the plug on this side in one direction. So make sure when you fish it through, you get the key in the correct direction. And you can look at the connection here before you do that. Now, the next thing I learned that made my life much easier is if you look at the end of this device here, you'll see these are open. Well, it came with plates on those. I took them off because you need to put the belt into that opening and connect it to the stepper motor gear and then fish it through to the other side. Now, when I'm done videoing, I'm going to put these back on because it'll keep dust and smoke and other things out of there. You have to be very careful. The screws for this end cap are tiny, easily lost if you drop them onto a hard surface. Now, overall, the assembly was straightforward as long as you understand about orienting the cable correctly and you take off the end caps. Let me point out a couple other things that are fascinating about this device. This device is all about safety first. If you're using the device and it tilts, it shuts off. If you're using the device and it doesn't move, it starts burning into a spot for too long, it shuts off. There's a big red button here that you can tap to shut it off. In fact, if that red button is down, it's not going to turn on. So you have to twist it and pull it up so it's in the up position. There's actually a key on this laser. If the key is not in the on position, it shuts off. The power button, even though you just press it, you don't just press it. You have to hold it for 5 seconds or it won't turn on. So in terms of safety, this is a highly optimized device. There's one other thing that I found surprising and really a delightful feature. In order to get good prints that don't have excessive burn marks, you really need what's called an air assist. An air assist is a device that blows air around the laser to keep the area around the laser cool and free of smoke and particles. Now, I don't have an air assist on here right now. And so all of the samples I'm going to show you today have pretty pronounced burn marks and smoke marks along the sides. For most lasers, X-Tool is an example, the air assist comes with a whole assembly so that you can get the air pointed in the right direction. On this laser, that's built in. There's a little port right here on the top, and into that port, you just put a rubber hose that comes with this. Then you connect the other end to an air pump. Now, I guess you could use an aquarium pump that you buy for $19, $20. You really want a pump that's going to push out at least about 30 liters per minute of air. And Ortur sells one that does 50 liters per minute for $100. So that compares with the price of many other pumps that are about $150 or more. You can also go online and just buy a pump that pushes out 30 to 50 liters per minute of air and attach it here to this device. Now, let's talk about setting this up. You'll notice here, there's a Wi-Fi antenna. I don't really see the purpose of Wi-Fi in many cases. There are a couple ways to set up the Wi-Fi. You can do it by connecting a program to this laser that has a terminal feature and type some very arcane commands in. Or you can go on to your phone and you can download the program they recommend for this laser, which is called Laser Explorer. Now, Laser Explorer is okay. It does work, and it allows you to set up the Wi-Fi on this printer. So with Laser Explorer on your phone, it can be Android or iOS, or it can be a tablet, you can directly print to this, but you can only engrave. You can't cut with Laser Explorer. The actual setup of the Wi-Fi with Laser Explorer is a little bit hokey. It's a little goofy. You have to actually turn on the device, then you have to press the power button 5 times in a row. And you have to get the timing just right until the power button starts blinking, and then you click the setup option and it will connect this phone to the Wi-Fi here and allow you to add your SID, your Wi-Fi network and password directly to this printer. I'm never going to use that. Now, if you were using this in a production environment, there's one case where you'd use this. It's very interesting. This printer has a Wi-Fi website interface. Once it's connected to the internet, you can connect to it from your local network from a browser. And you can move the head around and you can home it. But you also, if you have a prepared G-code file, you can take and send that file to this printer. Now, you still need a specialized program to slice or prepare your print. and generate the G-code file, because this is a industry standard, GRBL is the acronym, G-code based laser engraver and cutter. And so you can generate that file a number of different ways, but once you have it, you can send it directly to this from a web browser. So if I had 10 of these in a room in a production setting, and I was going to print the same things over and over again, a web browser might be a wonderful way to use it. There are two programs they recommend for computers for use with this laser. One's called Laser GRBL, Laser GRBL. It's a completely open source program. It's not really the easiest thing to use, but it's completely free. But it only runs on a Windows machine. Doesn't help me. So I'm actually using a program called Lightburn. Lightburn is a program that's used in a lot of professional settings, and there are multiple versions of it. Lightburn for GRBL or G-code based lasers like this one is $60. So you've spent, $600, $700, $800 for a laser. Spend the $60 to get a really professional program that you can use with it. And I'm going to show you how to use this laser now with Lightburn. Okay, so the first thing you do is go into Google and search for Lightburn. Go to the website, download the program. There's a free trial. I have the $60 paid version. Now, the next thing you need to do is turn the key on your printer. Make sure the button's not pressed in. So you turn it to the right and lift it up. Make sure you've plugged in the power into your laser and hold the button for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it will start blinking. When it starts blinking, it's going to start, and the first thing it's going to do is home the printer. Now, unlike my X-Tool D1, the D1 Pro does have end stops. My X-Tool D1 does not have end stops, so it means that it doesn't have a way of knowing where 0, 0 is. You just place your work product on the surface, you start from there. And that's one way to use the printer. But in this case, the engraver cutter knows that this is 0, 0. And it does that because it runs up to these little screws on the side and hits the stop. The stepper drivers, the chips on the control board that power the motors, sense that it hits a stop, and it sets that point as 0, 0. So this point right here is 0, 0 on this printer. And we'll see that Lightburn knows about the exact dimensions of my printer. And so if I place something in the middle, it will know to print there, as long as I tell Lightburn to use absolute positioning. And I'll show you that. So this is on now. And now I have to plug in my USB cable. It comes with a regular USB cable. I'm on a MacBook Pro, so I need a USB-C, so I have a little adapter here. So I'm going to plug this into my computer. Make sure it's plugged in on both ends. And now I'm going to start the Lightburn program. And you'll see it immediately opens up saying, there's nothing connected. I can't work without something connected. Now, this printer, because it is fully GRBL G-code compatible, is completely supported by Lightburn. The X-Tool printer is not. You have to have a support file you load. But for this printer, I'm just going to find my laser. I'm going to click Next. And it's going to look at the USB devices and look for this laser. And you'll see here that the Ortur LM3 came up. And if you make this a little wider here, we'll see that it's in G-code mode. That's exactly what we want. So I'm going to say Add Device. It's going to let me verify the parameters. I'm going to click on Next. Front left is the home, and I do want it to home on startup. So I'm going to leave that turned on. And the reason is I'm going to use absolute positioning on this laser. Go to Next, Finish. Now, if I had more than one lasers configured on this computer. Maybe I had an X-Tool, other lasers, or even other Ortur lasers. You can select your laser and make one the default. You should always have one as the default. That's going to be what it tries to connect to when it first turns on. I'm going to click on OK. Now you'll see here that it says disconnected. I need to do two things. Down here, I'm going to actually select the USB port. Now, how do you know what the USB port is? Well, you can unplug your USB cable, click on this pull down, see what's there, then plug it in, see what's there. The new one is your USB port. Okay. Now, I'm going to actually exit Lightburn. Now, this is a bug that I believe only impacts Macs, but now when I come back up, it's going to connect to that port, it's going to home the printer, and you'll see here I'm on the tab that says Console. You can see it actually connected, and it says Ready. Now, there are a couple other things I want to do to make Lightburn a little easier to use. So I'm going to go up to Lightburn Preferences. I'm going to make sure I have beginner mode turned on. That will reduce the clutter a little bit on the screen. That's the mode I was already in. And I'm going to go over here to say show full screen line cursor. That'll make it a little easier for me to position things in the right place here. And I'll show you why in a moment. And I'm going to click on OK. Now we are ready to use our laser. So what are we going to cut or engrave? Well, we can use Lightburn and click on any of the icons along the left and draw something from scratch. So let's say I'm going to position over there and type in make with tech, click. And then once I have something on there, if I come over here to where it says cuts layers, we'll see that item. So instead of that being drawn as an outline, I want it to be filled in. So I'm going to say fill. Now I can click on the little select arrow here and then drag these corners and make it as big or small as I want. So if I wanted to engrave MWT here, and that would be very big because this dimension 0 to 400 is the 0 to 400 here. And you'll see when I click on this little arrow, then click on an item, position on the center, you can see these crosshairs. Well, if I put that at 200 over here, then that's exactly centered here. So if I took and I drew an X here or I marked an X, I could find out exactly where the center is. Now, let me talk about my setup for one more second. I do something very interesting here. I actually have a big ceramic tile. It's actually quite heavy down here on the bottom. These are, I don't know, 18-inch, 24-inch ceramic tiles. It was a leftover from when my kitchen was retiled. And I use that under my laser to make sure I don't inadvertently burn through something and burn my table. Now, it's not ideal because it doesn't dissipate heat ideally. And for about $100, you can buy an aluminum honeycomb structure that will sit under here and do a better job. But if you have some ceramic tiles laying around, this is a cheap way to make sure you don't damage things. But this is going to take a fair amount of time and, more importantly, generate a lot of smoke. So one of the limitations of using these lasers is if you're using them with wood, they generate a lot of smoke, noticeable amount of smoke. So I normally, when I'm using this, I normally use it in this enclosure. This Engrave enclosure I really like. It's just a bit of aluminum pipe, very, very light, and a fabric, a fire-resistant fabric around it with a window you can look through. And all of the prints that I'm going to show you in a while were done in here. And I have that connected over a pipe. I don't know if you can see the pipe here. I'll show you a close-up to an exhaust fan. I'm going to do this initial sample right here in the open so you can see how it works. So instead of printing something that's going to generate a lot of smoke, let's take and click on box here. I'm going to draw a little box. I'm going to put it in line mode. So all we're really drawing is that line. Now if I double click on this layer, because each item is a layer, I can control how it's going to power the laser. Now, how do I know what to put in there? Well, I can go to the Ortur website, and that's one way I can find out. So the default here is 2000 millimeters per minute at 100% power. I don't know if that's right or not. So there's a better way. Let's go to a web browser for a second. And we're going to go to a website run by a guy who's another YouTuber called the LA Hobby Guy. I actually think he's doing a great job about talking about lasers. And then when you register for it, you'll see there's these download areas. Well, one of the download areas says Lightburn cut and engrave settings. And if you click on that, you can find your particular laser in this list of printers. And that will give you the ability to download a CLB file. Now, down here on the bottom, I can go to Library, and I can say Load, and I can load a CLB file. So here's the Ortur Laser Master 3.clb, and I can say Open. Now I have a list of a whole bunch of materials that him or some of his viewers have tried out. Now, materials are not all the same. So I happen to buy my 3mm basswood plywood from Amazon. I buy it from whoever's the cheapest at the time. That means every time I get it, it's a little different. So the settings won't be ideal. As an example, if you look at this particular little box on the back, if you were looking at a close-up, you'll see there's a little bit of smoke coloring on the back. So I probably have this either cutting it a little too high of a power or a little too slow. So those are all controllable, but this will give you a good way to start. So I'm going to go here to basswood. I'm going to go to 3mm. Now let's actually go to engrave. I'm going to select that. I'm going to say engrave medium. And I'm going to then click on my layer and click on assign. Now that has now assigned parameters to that layer. It also set the default to fill. I'm going to go back to line. Now that I have this set up, I want to see what it's actually going to do. What's the laser going to do? So I can click on this little icon here, which is a monitor icon. I'm going to make sure playback speed is all the way to the left, and I can say play. And it's going to show me now, simulate what the laser is going to do. Now, if this is a complex item, I'm going to want this to be faster. You can see here it's showing me the actual cuts. Because these are in black, they're actual cuts, and the cursor is in red, you can see what it's going to do. So that looks right. So now, where's it going to actually do this? Well, I have this more or less in the center, so I have to put my stock. This is actually a piece of basswood that came with the printer. So I'm going to put that approximately in the center, try to get it straight. Now I'm going to click back on laser, and I'm going to say first home. Let's make sure it knows where 0, 0 is. The green dot is where the printer is set as home, and the red dot is the current position. So it's at the home, and I'm going to click on frame. And let's watch this. This is actually going to show me where it would cut. Well, that's not where I want it. So let's move this over a little bit. Now, I did this via trial and error. Literally, if you get one of the professional bases, you put it in the right position, and then they have markings on it so you know exactly where the center is, and then you can line up where the item is. So this is a 240 by about 180, and you can line it up exactly in the right place. Now I'm ready to go. So I have my power set, and I can click on Start. Now, something I should have done immediately, because these lasers do generate a very bright light that if you look at it could damage your eyes, is put on the glasses that came with the laser. I actually love these glasses. Most of the time you get glasses that are dark green and you really can't see through them much. This seems to be ideal. So make sure you put your glasses on. The end result here is we engraved a little square. Okay, I'm going to power off this laser now. You have to hold it for 5 seconds. And let's look at some of the other items that I produced by using Lightburn with the Ortur Laser Master 3. Now this happens to be 3mm basswood, but I always check, and I take a caliper and I check, and this is 3.02, so that's pretty darn close. Because if it's a little too thick, you want it to go a little slower or a little higher power. You may need to adjust it depending on your batch of material. And I took a larger sheet and I cut out this square. This looks quite nice. The edges are nice and sharp. The corners are extremely sharp. So it had no trouble with that. The next thing I did is I went to models.makewithtech.com, and there's some laser cutter models on the site. And one is a model that's fascinating. You can set up to cut a box of whatever size you want. Well, I didn't want it to take too long, so I made a small box. And you can see on here, there's quite a bit of smoke marking. That would be mostly eliminated if I added an air assist. So when I'm done with this video, I'm spending $100 to get an air pump to add an air assist. And this came out quite nicely and fits together quite well. Then I wanted to see about the precision, just from a sort of consumer hobbyist point of view. So I found online some Japanese coasters. These are quite beautiful, and this cut very well. Once again, there's marking on the back because the ceramic tile is not ideal. If you added a aluminum honeycomb board, that would be better. It would also be better with an air assist. But this is a beautiful, beautiful piece, a little bit of sanding, and I have some very nice coasters that I could use for holiday gifts. Next, I wanted to try engraving. So I found online a picture of Benjamin Franklin, and I loaded it into Lightburn, and I selected the Engrave option. Now, when you select an image to engrave an image, there are many, many settings, and that's a whole nother video. But I just want to see in general how this came out. This was a first example. Normally, you'd do a small one, and you'd fine-tune all the settings. I could see how this could be quite nice. Then, I wanted to do something a little bigger, but that wouldn't take too long. So, what does a nice Jewish boy do? He prints a Christmas tree. So, this is a beautiful item that I got off of Thingiverse. It prints very, very quickly. And I used a drop of super glue to make sure it's stayed together, but a little bit of spray paint, and there's a wonderful holiday item. You can also find menorahs there at the same time. Now, can this laser do things other than wood? Well, in a limited amount of time I allocated to testing it, I wanted to test one item. And that one item was stainless steel, because I love making stainless steel name cards, either business cards or nameplates for various items I produce. I do a lot of woodworking. A nice stainless steel nameplate is a beautiful item. This laser and other lasers that are 10-watt optical lasers can mark stainless steel a little bit. but you really can't see it. The optimal way to use stainless steel is to buy a marking spray. It is a bit expensive. This was about $60. And you can find these online marking sprays. You can also find marking paper, which does the same thing. So basically what you do is you spray it on your item. This could be a mug. They make marking sprays for glass also. This could be a mug or another item. You let it dry, and then you engrave on it. Then when you wash it off, you end up with a beautiful item. Now, this is actually not really cut into, engraved into the metal. It's really the heat of the laser, which is intense, solidifies the marking component on top, and you can feel it slightly raised. Now, if you look carefully at the back, you can see a slight indentation, so the heat clearly ensured that this marking material adheres. This is not going to rub off or wash off. So this is a beautiful, beautiful item. Well, folks, I hope this was useful to you. And if it was, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, recommend the channel to all of your friends. If you want to talk about this and other lasers, go to forum.makewithtech.com. Have a great day, and let's continue to learn things together.